Welcome to the Foundation VR podcast. This is a pilot podcast with some leading industry specialists to help you know what's going on at the bleeding edge of the VR arcade industry. If you'd like to download a complete list of 54 common mistakes that VR arcade owners make, check the links below. My podcast today is with a good friend of mine, Jason Van Hierden from VRCORE, formerly known as VRKADE and based out of Alberta, Canada. They are a franchise and one of the top performing VR arcades in North America. Currently, they have 6 locations and are expanding. So we'll go ahead and bring in Jason. Jason, I was thinking about it. I think we've been friends for over 5 years now.
Yeah, that's a long time. In adult world, that's like half of my adult life.
Yeah, I think that makes you a lifelong friend now.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think the stat is if you have a friend for 7 years, they will likely be a lifelong friend.
That's awesome. Well, here we are.
That is pretty cool. Yeah, you're one of my better connections in the VR industry. Well, I really appreciate chatting with you.
Same. So can you tell me a little bit about how VRCORE is doing right now?
Yeah, so we're at 6 stores right now, and I'm really working on 2 different things. I'm working on opening I'm hoping 2 locations this year, 1 corporate and 1 franchise. Then all of my franchisees are talking about opening up more stores, which I see as a really good sign of being a good concept, a good system, because the people that are currently in it want more. And that normally means that they're profitable, that they're happy with the way the business is run, and they just want to increase the number of stores that they have so that they can hire a little bit better people and find a little bit more freedom for themselves.
That's awesome. Well, you guys have been crushing it for years, but VRCORE is more than a VRCADE though now, right?
Yes. So that's on the regular VRCORE side with our stores. I mean, I could talk all day about the VRCORE education. It's definitely what I'm excited about. Obviously, I realized that my core business is still virtual reality centers, and that business is obviously very healthy, doing very well. We were very fortunate that we didn't lose any locations through COVID. And now we're looking at building some more locations. So just trying to juggle both balls while not losing the golden goose that I've got.
If you'd like a complete list of Foundation VR's 40 plus recommendations for your VR arcade, check the links below.
And then I'm just in the process of starting up the VRCORE education platform. And the easiest way to explain it is just gymnasium scale education content. And so we would be a in-school field trip where we take our equipment to the school and we provide a 1 hour or 2 hour field trip for every single class in the school. And so right from grade 3 to grade 12, all of those classes would come through the gymnasium and experience our gymnasium scale multi-learner educational platform. Where that one is at right now, the program that we're looking to build is a space program. And so we would turn the gymnasium into the solar system and then a planetarium. And then the last scene would be a giant globe in the middle of the gymnasium where kids can study weather patterns and biomes, and they can see population movement, different things like that. So it's not just science that we're trying to hit. We're trying to hit, obviously phys ed, science, social studies, history is a really interesting thing to learn in VR. Anyway, so in order to do that experience from grade 3 to grade 12, well, we need an hour of content for each grade. So that's 10 hours of content that we need to not only have the virtual reality assets for, but we have to have the curriculum assets for, so that the teacher knows what they're drawing attention to. Because for grade 3, you're drawing attention to completely different assets and concepts than you are for grade 7. And again, for grade 11. For grade 11, you're looking at a lot more physics-based things. For grade 7, you're looking a lot more at biomes and weather patterns and things like that. And for grade 3, you're looking at a lot simpler concepts. And so we need all of those assets built into the experience that we have. And so we need 10 hours of content from an asset perspective, but also from a curriculum perspective. And where we're at now is we're building the first hour of content. So really it would be a grade 7 offering. And with that platform, we would be able to go to schools, show them, the 1 hour we have compared to the 10 hour that we would eventually want to sell them, and sell them on the idea. So we would get pre-orders from schools. And then once we've got the pre-orders from schools, then we can go to investors and raise the couple $100,000 that we need in order to build the full 10 hour experience, hit the ground running with that, and hopefully see cash flow within the next year.
You guys are already pioneers in the VRCADE industry, and your educational camps are great, but this really takes it to a new level.
Yeah.
So what age group is this focused towards?
Seventh grader is what we're building for our first slice. But of course, we want to build it for all 10 grades.
That's awesome because you don't have to actually bring the kids to the arcade. You can actually just go to the schools. Do you sell this as a field trip?
Yeah, it's an in-school field trip. And there's a lot of advantages to bringing virtual reality to schools this way. Number one, the field trip is in their school, so they don't have to worry about waivers for the kids. They don't have to worry about busing. Busing is oftentimes $10 or $12 per kid just to get them from the school to the zoo or to the science center or the museum or wherever they want to go. So we're saving them on that. But really, the largest advantage is that teachers don't need to understand the virtual reality technology. So the way the business is being offered right now is companies are trying to get schools to buy headsets. And they say, okay, now that you have the headset, you can put our software onto your headset, like a pig dissection or a frog dissection or a molecule builder or whatever it is. The school would, number one, buy the headset, so they have to understand the hardware enough to keep them maintained, and then they have to buy the software, and the schools are expected to put those two together, which some schools are willing to do. But you've got a large investment with the hardware and now with the software, and you've got a 20 to 30 minute experience for all of your grade 7 kids, and that's it. So you buy the pig dissection, you've just spent $40,000 on headsets, you've spent some money on the software, whether it's a lifetime license or by the minute, and you now have one experience for one grade. And if you want another experience for more grades, well, you've got to go find more software, figure out how to put that onto your headset. If it's from a different company, then it's going to be a different process. And so you would need, if you want to buy 40 headsets, put them in a school and have them be used at least once a week, you would need at least one part-time employee to run that whole program. And schools are just generally not interested in hiring an extra person just to run their virtual reality headsets. And so the advantage with what we have is we take care of the technology. We bring the technology in and we take it right back out. And we're charging somewhere, depends how big the school is, but we're looking at about $30 per student. And so it'll end up being somewhere between $3,000 and $10,000 for your entire school to do a field trip. It's going to be world class, the best that's out there. You pay it once. We give you a kick-ass educational experience, and it's perfectly curated to your local area's educational objectives. So I'm here in Alberta, Canada, and so for grade 7, we step in and we are building our curriculum to match what the grade 7 curriculum needs. And that would be social studies, science, phys ed, maybe some English. So we're looking at all of these subjects and we are baking it into our curriculum. Then if we go to Ohio, where you're at, well, then we study the educational objectives for the grades where you're at, and the grade 7s may get a completely different experience. And the reason we're doing that is because we want teachers to push having us. And once they've had us, their entire class go through, then for the rest of their semester or the rest of their year, they're able to reference back what the kids learned in the educational experience that we provided them. So they could say, do you remember how the planetary pole affected the meteors that you were shooting at each other when VRCORE Education came and did a field trip with us? And immediately the kids, they were there, they did it, they saw it, they felt it, they shot their friend, and that meteor went around a couple of planets before hitting their friend, and they're like, oh, that's meteor dodgeball, but it teaches them something that they're able to reference for the rest of the year.
You know, you see things that come along every so often, and this is something that's truly innovative. And it's not very often that I say that. Because this is something that could literally change how education is done in schools. The schools don't hire anyone. They don't have to learn how to use the equipment, and they don't have to pay for busing, right?
Yeah.
So this is not only exciting, but it's relatively low cost for the schools. What kind of timeline are you thinking?
So I should have my first slice done, the first hour of content done in about 2 months. And at that point, then I start going to schools. I bring them into my arcade. I could probably get groups of principals and groups of teachers, 30 and 50 at a time. They come in, we do a wine and cheese night. And in my arena that I'm currently sitting in, we would provide them the educational or the slice of the educational experience that we bring to their school, and then garnish interest and tell them, hey, if you want to book us for next year, we're already starting to book up for next year.
So if I'm a VRCADE owner, is this something that I can license from you?
Yeah, so we're looking at that from a couple of different avenues. The first one would be through just general franchising. And what our anticipation is that we would do a really low franchise fee and then a higher royalty. And the reason we want to do that is we want to be able to allow people to get into this quickly. So if yourself, if you wanted to buy a franchise of this, you would pay the $5,000 or $10,000 franchise fee, and then you pay the $60,000 or $80,000 for the equipment that you need, and that would be really most of the equipment is 35 Vive Focus 3s. And so you buy all of the Vive Focus 3s that you need. If you have an arcade with a whole bunch of those already, well, then you've already got the majority of your hardware budget taken care of. And then we just charge for the software. So it would just be a royalty and software put together. And so it's a really cool business in the sense that if you want to shut it down for a month, you can. There are no expenses. You put all of that equipment into your closet in your house and you go on vacation for a month. You don't have rent and employees and all of these static costs. You might have to pay for your more expensive cell phone bill to get internet connectivity. Overall, it's a really low overhead. And with the amount of return on investment, we're hoping that whoever buys a franchise for this would be able to get a full return on investment within the first year. And the second avenue that we're looking at this is we want to hire a salesman that goes to a city. So let's say Cincinnati, Ohio. So he would come to Cincinnati and he would tour all of the private schools first in your area. You would have 4 headsets with him. You set meetings with all of the principals and teachers and pre-sell approximately 4 months worth of bookings. And that 4 months worth of bookings, if you were to not pay yourself, should pay for the entire startup cost. So that would be the $10,000 franchise fee and the $80,000 hardware that you need. And we would sell that as a package. So we would first pre-sell Cincinnati 4 months worth of sales. Then we would find a franchisee that would be able to deliver this product and sell it to them as, here's your package. This is essentially going to cost you nothing. And after that, yeah, you're making 6 figures a year, relatively easy. And then if you wanted to do multiple of them and create a business around it where you have a central location where everybody kind of starts from, then your initial investment is less than $100,000 per team. And if you have 4 or 5 teams going, well, you're easily making 7 figures a year.
So if I'm understanding correctly, you're saying that VRCORE will actually do the sales for the franchise owner?
That's our anticipation. Obviously, we haven't pulled that off yet. But I've got the salesman that wants to do the traveling. And obviously, we would need to take a portion of those sales just to pay for the traveling salesman and to make it worth our time. But then it becomes an almost zero risk endeavor. And so I anticipate scaling this significantly faster than the arcade model. Part of our vision is in the next 8 to 10 years to have 5% of North American students doing at least one of our modules. And when I say module, our first module is space. Our next module will likely be something around atoms and molecules. And I'd like for our third module to be something around history, because I would love it if for our high school students, we could have Normandy Beach and we've got the Allies storming Normandy Beach in every school gymnasium. Well, every kid is going to have a solid understanding of, number one, the horrificness of war, and number two, the sacrifice that our ancestors made in order for us to have the freedoms that we have.
So you're looking at September or October being able to start demoing this in actual schools?
Yeah. So in the next 2 months, we should have that built. Our developers were about halfway done. And the thing with our first initial slice is it's only an hour of content, but it'll probably be 50% of what we need for the whole project, because we already have our networking down. We already have our gymnasium scale stuff down. We already have our multi-learner, everything down. And so to go from 1 hour to 9 hours, it's not a ton more work. We just need to create more assets and get more curriculum with our teachers. And so the business model, when we go to a school, what we send to the school would be between 30 and 40 headsets. There would be a server, because we need this all to run local. If you have spotty internet, we can't have an $8,000 sale go down the drain because we have spotty internet. So we've got a locally hosted server or laptop that you would bring with you, and obviously an extremely robust network in order to keep them all together. And so everything that you're bringing into the school, you could fit in 2 duffel bags. So you bring that into the school, obviously with all of your marketing material, all of your banners and stuff like that. And it would be 1 teacher and 1 tech that goes into the school. So the teacher is the one that has memorized the 10 hours of content that needs to be provided to the students, or at least as close to memorized as possible. So for grade 4s, they know, okay, we start with this step, that takes 15 minutes. Then we go into this game that takes 5 minutes. And then we go into this step that takes 18 minutes. So the teacher is the one that's guiding the students through this experience specific to the grade that they have. That way we don't have to build a separate build for each one of the grades. It's just the teacher spends more time in the solar system for grade 11s, and for grade 7s, they spend more time around, the massive globe, because they're studying the weather patterns, biomes, etc. And then we obviously have a tech on site, because you've run an arcade, I've run an arcade. There's always technical issues that happen. There's an audio issue, or somebody got disconnected, or there's a miscalibration or something like that. And so the tech is there to be responsible for obviously running the server side of the experience, as well as help any issues that arise. And so it's a team of 2 people. So our perfect franchisee would be a couple that just came out of college or university, and one of them is a teacher and the other is an IT specialist. The 2 of them, this is their business that they start off with. We get pre-approved with all of the national banks. You can get a loan out super easy with this. So as long as you've got a solid credit score, you can start this business.
Man, you're getting me excited. Where do I sign up?
Where's your teacher?
So is this specifically for teachers, or can anyone sign up to franchise this?
It entirely depends on how the franchisee wants to set up their business. Because at the end of the day, it is their business. So if the franchisee is the teacher and the IT specialist, great. Then they're the ones that buy the franchise from us and obviously pay the software licensing and royalties. If you're the investor and you want to have 6 teams of 1 teacher and 1 IT specialist, then obviously you would be able to do the same thing. So you buy the franchise, and then you have the 6 teams that are able to do 6 different schools at a time.
If someone wanted to learn more, where would they go?
Yeah, I mean, you could email myself for now. In the next, as part of the slice, we're getting our website set up. We're getting all of these details put in place. So all of the sales funnels and so on put into place.
Well, this is exciting, and this is something that if you already own a VR arcade, then it has huge potential as a revenue stream. But if you're looking to get in the industry, it's something that I could see a lot of people doing as well. So this is awesome.
Yeah, just talking about a virtual reality arcade, purchasing a system like this, it's extremely advantageous, because if we go into a school and we provide a killer experience to 2,000 kids, We could put your arcade's logo on the banners. For VR Atlanta, they put their logo on the banners, and they have 2,000 kids that go through their experience. They give each one of those kids a t-shirt with their logo on it and powered by VRCORE Education. Now they've got 2,000 billboards running around the city that are all like, hey, I want to do a birthday party at this place.
That's the best kind of marketing.
And so the symbiotic relationship there is really powerful. And then on the flip side, at our locations, we've had groups of principals come in where you've got 30 or 40 principals that come in to play games as a final hurrah at the end of the year. Well, they would be the perfect people to present, hey, we can do this in your school and hopefully secure some sales that way.
This is 10 times better than a normal mobile event.
It's mobile events that you can actually make some money with.
Yeah, so for existing VR arcades, we always tell them not to invest in anything unless it has the possibility to actually be the largest revenue stream that could pay for the whole business. But this is a potential 7-figure stream.
Mm-hmm. 7-figure business on its own that supports your current business. And it's possible that you already have the hardware to run this side business. And so your initial startup cost is $20,000 or $30,000. And if we can, or even if you can pre-sell your city before buying the franchise, just go to some schools and say, hey, this is what we've got. Do you want to buy it? You could pre-sell $30,000 worth of this just like that. And so it doesn't end up costing you anything.
Well, that sounds like a no-brainer. Now I want it to be done.
Yeah, same. We've talked to 80% of the private schools here in Calgary, and every single one of them have said, take my money. They've said, when can we book you? We've never had one that was like, oh, that sounds interesting. Why don't you give us a call when you have it ready? No, they are all on the edge of their seat, ready to go. And so obviously we start with private schools because they're the ones that are competing with each other in order to provide the best experience. So if you can go to one really solid private school and they're motivated to have you in because the educational value is there. And then once you've landed that person, then you tell all of the other private schools, well, Tweedsmuir is doing this field trip. Are you going to be left behind? And then the rest of them gobble it up. Once all of the private schools have done it, then you get approved in the public school districts. And so the public schools do take a little bit longer. But then once you've got the public school districts approved, then you can hit up any of them and be their field trip offering. And so obviously module 1 would be space. And so maybe this year you just hit all of the schools and do the space experience. And maybe next year your students want to do space and molecules. And so you've just doubled your potential market by adding more experiences.
This literally takes away all the pain points I've heard from schools. Any other thoughts on how VR arcades could use something like this?
Yeah, the next thing that it really opens up for them is if that arcade has a free roam arena, well, then they can take the same concept and now they're having fun with a birthday party in the arena. And my vision for the next step of this is if we buy out shopping malls and we have shopping mall scale arena. We've got several hundred players that are all playing together. And if you've already got the name of being the free roam guy in your city, well, then of course you're the first person that everybody's going to think of when there's a new shopping mall scale arena that goes up.
Well, the possibilities seem limitless, and I wish that it existed when I had my arcades. So,
well, you can always jump in, have some fun with us.
I might, man. Seriously, this is the kind of thing that makes me start looking for investors. If you're interested in VRCORE's educational programs, check the links below. Something that has always really impressed me with what you're doing specifically, you already have the VRCORE educational camps, and now you're going into this, this new venture, which is going to be huge. The way that you have your stores, it's very much about profit per square foot. It's very much about customer service. All you do is VR versus something like a Mott VR or something like some of the FECs that are out there. They try to go more wide with their experiences. But when I look at VRCADE, I see top quality VRCADE chain that is specifically focused on VR. Do you think that that has advantages to an FEC or something that has more things in it?
Oh, absolutely. If you can add more reasons for people to come to your location, I think that your job becomes easier. It's harder for us because we only have one offering. And if that one offering sucks, we go under.
Yeah.
If an FEC has 20 offerings and one offering sucks, they're likely going to be just fine. And so we chose to stay laser focused on this because we wanted to be the best in the world at running a virtual reality arcade. Would I say that it's the best way to go? No. Everybody runs their businesses a little bit different. If you're looking at business through the eyes of a poker player, statistics, well, then I think Jay from Mont VR has a much better chance because he's putting more offerings out there. And if one of them is suffering, well, then he doesn't get hit quite as hard. It's almost like having a well-rounded portfolio. Well, we don't have a well-rounded portfolio. We have an extremely focused portfolio. And now, does that mean that we're likely going to be the very best in the world at what we do? It's quite likely. And that's what we're banking on. Betting wrong, we're going to go down hard. If somebody like Jay bets wrong on mini golf or bowling or whatever he does next, he's not going to go down quite as hard because he still has the other revenue that he's able to pull in. So I wouldn't recommend that everybody follows our footsteps. We're just extremely passionate about the direction that we're going, and we would be unfair to ourselves to pick anything other than the VRCORE really has, it's a three-stranded business. We are VR entertainment, we are VR education, and we are VR esports. Obviously, the entertainment side is what we started on, and we attempt to be the best that we can be. We're just starting to build the VR education side of things. We've done summer camps for 4 or 5 years now, and at times it accounts for 50% of our revenue. But we're looking to radically eclipse the VR center business. And then the last one being VR esports, we don't anticipate even sticking our toe in that water for another decade.
Yeah.
But that is our business. We are those three things. And if I'm the owner and CEO of this company, it will not change.
It reminds me of Google. They beat out all the other search engines because when you go to Google, it's just the best search. It's just search bar and you're going to get the best results. It just comes down to your personality. I mean, Yahoo's a great search engine. Their whole approach was more of an FEC approach, and Google just created the best product. So you do have to think in terms of, if you're going to be a VR arcade that only focuses on VR, you need to provide the best experience. If you're someone who wants to mitigate the risk, then the FEC route's great. What made you get into the VR arcade industry?
I got into the industry kicking and screaming. So I used to run a construction company, and a buddy of mine who bought the domain name VRKADE.com years prior said, instead of selling this domain, why don't you and I just open the business ourselves? And so we had talked about tons of different business ideas, anything from online businesses to local to construction to all kinds of things. And so it wasn't abnormal for us to discuss business ideas. So he came over for the evening, and we went through the whole business model, and we figured, yeah, $25 an hour is about where we would want to charge. And to start this thing off, we said, well, let's do 6 bays just to see if it works. And by the end of the evening, I told him, I said, this store can only make gross revenue $150 an hour. Like, it's pretty small. And I was currently running a construction company making $250 an hour net. And so I was like, it's risk, it's money that we got to put out up front. It's a startup, and the difficulties of a startup, anybody that's done it knows it's never as easy as it looks. The return on investment was just not enough. So my buddy went away, and a month later, he was still really into this idea. And he said, Jason, we've got to open this business. And I just told him, I said, $150 an hour gross. It's not enough. So he went away, and a month later he came back and he said, Jason, we've got to open this business. And hear me out. I know you're going to say 150, but if we nail this business and then we start building more locations, this is a system that you can then sell. Whereas a construction company, it's very difficult to sell a small to medium sized construction company unless you have 5 years of contracts coming in or some substantial connections. It's really difficult to sell a construction company of the size that I had. So when he said that we could build a system, a light went on upstairs. And I said, okay, I mean, maybe this first store isn't going to be able to meet what my current business is doing, but if it works, it's way more scalable than a construction company. Moving it to other cities is way easier. And so that's exactly what we did.
Wow. So you literally got dragged into it. You said no 3
Oh,
times.
yeah. I said no 3 times. And
Wow.
it proved to be way more fun than my previous business. So since then, I bought out my co-founder. Now this business nets as much as my previous business did.
That's awesome. How did COVID affect you guys?
Yeah, so obviously when the government says that we have to shut our doors, our revenue goes to zero. We did a little bit of Quest 2 rentals, so it was, a couple $1,000s there. But when the government said shut down because we're not vital, we made nothing. But as long as we were allowed to be open, we did really well. We were able to hit, 70, 80%. I mean, if I look at my Q4 for 2019, when everybody was rocking, and I look at my Q4 for 2020, our 2020 numbers actually beat our 2019 numbers. And so when we were allowed to be open, we did really well. And I think that has a lot to do with trust in a brand. You probably noticed that during COVID, a lot of people ate out less at the small mom and pop restaurants and they ate out more at the larger chains.
That's right. Yeah.
And that's largely due to trust in the brand because they're saying, okay, I only have this much to spend on whatever they're looking at. And so they're going to go with the brand that they know and they trust the best. And so one of the biggest things that we need to do with our virtual reality centers is create trust with customers. And the only way to do that is to go above and beyond to provide the absolute best customer service possible. And one of the things that we do for that is on our busiest days when we're full from open to close, we have an extra staff member on staff and his job description is to help the customer. So if there's a birthday party that comes in and the mom is like, oh, I forgot to wrap the present. My guy is down the street buying wrapping paper. Like it is whatever the customer needs is what that person, that's their job. They need to go provide whatever the customer needs. If they need to go order pizza, oh, that customer is in his car and he is picking up the pizza if it's not delivery for that birthday party. Things like that. And when you go above and beyond like that, you spend way less on marketing because you have your customers come back twice a year instead of once a year. Well, that's double the revenue if every single one of your customers comes back just one more time a year.
That reminded me of Tony Hsieh's book, Delivering Happiness. He founded Zappos, the shoe company, and he talks about that. If you call into Zappos and you order a pizza, they're going to order the pizza for you. It's the perfect way to position yourself as a VR arcade because at the end of the day, we've had a lot of conversations, and the thing that I'm amazed the most about the way you run your business is you don't spend a ton on marketing. Every time I ask you about like, okay, well, how are you 70 to 80% capacity? Well, your answer is always we deliver top quality customer service. And we teach that a lot is it's starting with those core values you have and just radiating outwards. And people really take to that. So I love to hear that. Someone specifically just to make sure the customer is happy. I mean, really ask yourself if your VR arcade is going to that degree because that's what the top performers are doing.
So I think you hit the nail right on the head there, Jason. You said it's a culture of customer experience. And so one of the things that we implement into our company is we say, okay, from the top. So obviously I'm the owner and founder of VRCORE, formerly VRKADE. It is my job to go to the people that are working underneath of me every single day, or at least every single week, and say, how can I make your job easier? And then to turn around and have those people go to the store managers and say every single day, at least every week, how can I make your job easier? And then the store managers go to their assistant managers and their frontline workers, and they say, how can I make your job easier? So that at the end of the day, the frontline workers have the support that they need to support the customer, not to support their manager. And so what oftentimes happens is employees are like, no, I need to get this job done for my manager because that's who I work for.
Yeah.
But that's not the case.
Mm-hmm.
The frontline workers work for the customer. The managers work for the frontline employees. The reason they exist is to make their job easier for the frontline employees. And so when our company made that mental switch, all of a sudden the culture was entirely different, because now the managers are saying, okay, what systems can we put into place to help the frontline staff streamline the experience so that the frontline staff can be absolutely focused on the customer as much of the time as possible.
That is so brilliant, because most companies aren't fun to work for. They don't take care of their customers, and they spend tons on marketing. But you kind of reverse engineered it and just said, how can I make this business about people? And how can I make sure that all my team members are happy? How can I make sure that they're fulfilled in their job? And that is the single thing that I think separates you from other arcades. You have competitors down the street, and your arcade's full, and not to name names, but I've seen these other locations, and they don't compete on that level. And the biggest thing I see, if I were to just say, is your customer service is off the chart.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, it's not like we get it right every time, but it's definitely what we pursue. And at the end of the day, I think that leadership needs to have two core values. And for us, it's certitude and humility. And so as leadership, we are here to serve you as much as possible in as humble of a way as possible, and not, the fake crap that you see all over the place, but the honest to God truth humility, so that you are there to serve your people when they need you most. At the end of the day, your people, all they want to know is, do you have my back? And are you going to reward me for the work that I put in? And so if we can serve them in that way, then they're able to put 100% of their focus towards completing their job and helping the people that are underneath of them. And then obviously at the frontline workers, they're able to put all of their energy towards the customer.
Yeah, there's no wasted energy. I mean, think about how many times, if you're not happy at work, there's no metric for how much inefficiency and how much they're costing you.
Yeah, I definitely think that that's one part of it. If you take care of your people really well, there is still a lot of areas of business that are important.
Yeah.
But I would say chief of them is just treat your people right so that they want to enjoy their work. They perform better on average. And then a lot of those small issues, you don't have to write people up for.
What do you think is going to change about the VR arcade industry in the next few years?
I think there's going to be a couple of brands, and this has kind of already happened in Europe so far as I can tell, a couple of brands that really step up and shine. I don't think that VR entertainment is going to go away anytime soon, but I think it needs to evolve into arena scale, into mall scale. Eventually, it'll be VR esports, but the problem with VR esports right now is that there's no hardcore players in the industry. The only reason hockey and football and basketball all work is because you have hardcore parents and hardcore kids that grow up into this. And so then they want to turn around and play. And the same thing has happened with video games. You've got hardcore parents that push hardcore kids into becoming professionals with this. Well, we've never grown up with, our parents didn't have VR, so they don't care about it at all. We've only had VR for so long. And so, okay, I'm better at you than Beat Saber. Nobody really cares right now. Whereas we need some time for there to be some hardcore players that actually care where they stand.
How do you think people owning Oculus Quest will affect VR arcades?
Oculus Quest owners are really interesting. The stats say that only about 4% of Oculus Quest owners use their headset on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
And so they're owned, and it's a good headset, but it's not played enough to really move the dial. Our whole business model is selling to groups of people. And so you're talking the birthday parties, the bachelor parties, the groups of friends that are looking for a killer escape room. That's our market. And that's not going to go away anytime soon. The
Exactly.
thing that made me realize that in an instant is if we look at the axe throwing industry, people go to an axe throwing establishment to hang out with their friends, and they spend $20 an hour to throw an axe at a piece of wood. Well, at least one of us has a friend that has a tree in their backyard. We could put a piece of 2x10 or 2x12 on that tree, go to the local hardware store, pick up $8 axes, and do the same thing in our backyard while spending less than going to the axe throwing place one time.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't happen.
Yep.
Our generation, number one, we're not going to be able to afford as nice of houses as our parents did. And so that means we're not going to be having as many people over to our houses as we used to. And so that means social places to gather with your friends are going to become more and more popular. Our parents, they had everybody over to their house for supper. That's good Southern hospitality or wherever you're from. But our generation isn't going to do that. We're going to be living in smaller places that we don't invite people out to. So we eat out more and we do more group social activities. The virtual reality center business is going to explode.
Yeah, I agree 100%. That's something that we preach too is, I mean, look at laser tag. Laser tag had its heyday in the 90s, and there's still, I mean, down the street, there's a laser tag place that's still open. The fact that they're surviving pretty much just off birthday parties.
We're not a rental service. We're a fully guided experience.
Exactly. They're coming for that experience. They're coming for, they want to have fun with their friends. The Oculus Quest, if anything, I actually think it's better for the VR arcade industry because it's doing that hard work for the marketing that when I started, you were 2016 too. Yeah, back then we had to do all the marketing. It was like no one even knew what VR was really. So the more quests that are sold, the better, because I agree. I own 2 quests and I don't remember the last time I used either of them. So
that's pretty sad. Yeah, and the adventure that you get in a Ubisoft escape room is unparalleled.
Yes.
Maybe you'll get an evening like that playing Demio with your friends on quests, but it's about as close as you can get to that.
Yeah, or Intermission or VRCADE or any of that stuff. It's just, yeah, you can't get that at home. It's a completely different experience.
So how many stations do you need to make it in the VR arcade industry?
You need at least 10 stations in order to be able to sustain the business and really make the 6 figures a year that you need to out of a location.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, the sweet spot is 16 stations, just because we have 1 staff member per 8 stations. And so if you have 10 or 11 stations, oftentimes you still need those 2 staff members without the additional revenue.
Right. Yeah, and so you mentioned, you actually opened stores during COVID. That's pretty wild, and I've actually heard that from some of our top performing arcades. How did COVID affect you guys as far as sales go? As far as I know in Canada it's a lot more strict, so I'm kind of curious.
Yeah, so obviously when the government says that we have to shut our doors, our revenue goes to zero. We did a little bit of Quest 2 rentals, so it was a couple $1,000s there. But when the government said shut down because we're not vital, we made nothing. But as long as we were allowed to be open, we did really well. We were able to hit 70, 80%. I mean, if I look at my Q4 for 2019 when everybody was rocking, and I look at my Q4 for 2020, our 2020 numbers actually beat our 2019 numbers. And so when we were allowed to be open, we did really well. And I think that has a lot to do with trust in a brand. You probably noticed that during COVID, a lot of people ate out less at the small mom and pop restaurants.
I know you're very much about systems. You're very much about like making sure that the arcade runs smoothly. Is there kind of a hack that you'd say for the arcade owners?
So I just need to preface this. If any of my employees are listening to this, you have to shut it off right now. My favorite thing is using inspiration as currency. And so the way that I do that is I realize that in our generation, we care about more than just money. Don't get me wrong. Our generation still cares about how much money we make, but people really, they really care about whether they enjoy the work that they do, whether they wake up ready to go to work and happy in the morning versus dreading their job. and whether they enjoy the people that they work with. And so one of those things that is very key to that is the culture. And as the owner and founder of the company, it's my job to ensure that the overarching culture is a healthy one. Obviously, I can't be involved in every single interpersonal relationship between every single set of employees, but I can set a culture of trust and a culture of humility and a culture of loyalty and so on and so forth. And then beyond that, I love to sit down with my people and inspire them, tell them who they can be, who I see them to be in the future if they apply this book, this set of learning, and this specific track. And the inspiration and pulling out the belief in themselves is what I think that I'm one of the best at. And I full on see it as a part of payment to my employees. And so in my locations, I'm able to pay less per hour because I'm able to provide opportunity and inspiration so that these people end up becoming much, much better people by the time they leave us, which we have employees that leave us, of course, every business does. But by the time they leave us, they've got a significant increase in skills that they're able to demand that higher rate than even we were even willing to pay. And so, yeah, at the end of the day, I pay partially in inspiration and culture. I think the thing that really set my life on a specific trajectory was a conversation that I had with my dad when I was about 18 years old. And I may have told you this story already, Jason, but he asked me the question. He said, what's the difference between the guy that makes 50 grand a year, 500 grand a year, or 5 million a year? And of course, at 18, I had tons of answers. Well, the $5 million a year guy is luckier, or he has more connections, or he's more intelligent, or he had a better head start from his parents' money, or he hustles. And every single answer that I gave my dad, he was like, yeah, those things, they can make a difference. But there's one key thing that makes the biggest difference. He said those three people think distinctively different. They think about money different. They think about problems different. They think about people different. They think about opportunity different. So if I were to say to you right now, hey, Jason, I'm going to give you $1,000 at the end of the week. I'm going to guess, at least most people, they immediately tie that $1,000 to an asset that they want to buy. They're like, oh, I can afford this Xbox, or I can get this new sound bar that I want, or this new bike. They immediately allocate that money to, okay, it goes towards this asset. Whereas if you get the ultra rich and you say, okay, I'm going to give you $1,000 at the end of the week, they're immediately thinking about, okay, how can I utilize that money to complete the goal that I am trying to complete? They view the money as a tool to complete the job that they're trying to complete.
Let me ask you this then. Say if there's one thing that all VRCADE owners have in common, there's moments that are awesome and then there's moments that are really tough. What's kind of like the toughest thing that you've gone through at VRCADE?
Shit, how much time do you have?
Yeah. You and me both.
Definitely the thing that I lost the most sleep over was the buying out my old business partner. So he was a really good friend of mine. Still consider him a very close friend. But things turned a little bit south, a little bit sour, and I definitely did things that I regret, and there's definitely areas that I wish we both would have showed up with a little bit more maturity. You're gonna have pain no matter who you pick, and so try to mitigate your risk as much as possible. Put together solid unanimous shareholders agreements. Put together some really good understandings. But know that when you step into business with a partner, it's risk.
Yeah.
There is risk. And for you to mitigate 100% of it, well, if you want to do that, you'll never actually pull the trigger and do anything.
Do you mind if I twist the knife a little bit?
Sure.
And this could be for any business, because I mean, I've had a million business failures. I don't like the word failure necessarily, because there's always, there are always learning experiences, but I also don't shy away from it, just because if you go to do something and you fail, it's fine. It's okay. You learn from it. But I'm curious, do you have anything that you would consider to be, you can either call it a failure or a major learning experience?
That's a really good question. I've never had anything massive fail, which is alarming in and of itself. But obviously, in smaller senses, I would call my arena in my flagship location somewhat of a failure. It didn't turn out to be what I was hoping it would be. It accounts for 10% of the revenue of an entire location, while taking 40% of the square footage. But on the flip side, it's turning into an educational platform that should have a lot more upside than a store or an arena ever would have.
Can you tell people a little bit about VRCORE's educational camps?
Yeah, so we've been running educational summer camps for about 5 years now. And this is a summer camp, spring camp, or PD day offering that you can do. And it's a week long. It runs Monday to Friday from 8 in the morning till 5 in the evening, or whatever time you choose. And people will buy 1 week at a time. So we have 2 weeks that are available. We actually sell our summer camp program to other arcades if you're interested. And it comes as a packaged, deliverable product that you should be able to deploy relatively quickly. You still need to do direct licensing with the developers. But beyond that, you should have a lot of marketing material that you can use. Obviously, the schedules and all of the worksheets. And like I said earlier, times like over the summer, our summer camp program accounts for almost 50% of our gross revenue. So it can be a fairly large portion of our business.
Is this something that you could just also do just like an after school program?
You probably could. It's not perfectly set up for that. You could cut it into pieces and do it as an after school program. We did have a coding camp that we did as an after school program. It would be for an hour and a half every week after school, obviously. And by the end of 12 weeks, these kids would have collectively created their own virtual reality game.
Oh, wow.
Right from the code itself. So we don't offer that product as for sale. But if you were interested in it, we could easily package it and sell an after-school coding program for you.
How quickly do you think you can get an ROI on that?
It entirely depends on how you run your location. If you're already a top-performing arcade and you run everything with excellence, we've seen arcades get a return on the investment that they give us inside the first 2 months.
Wow.
If it's something that you're hoping to buy and just hand off to a $18 an hour manager, you're not going to get any return on investment. It still takes effort.
Sure. Yeah. In a way, you're kind of offering it. It's almost like a daycare service, right? It's
9 hours.
So yeah, eight or 9 hours. And you charge what, like $500 a kid?
500, $495 per kid. And so again, it comes back to providing that excellent top-notch customer service so that your customer trusts you enough to leave their child with you.
So what are 3 books that you would recommend?
Well, I would highly recommend Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I would highly recommend Start With Why. And I would highly recommend Good to Great. Mm-hmm. Those are just some fundamental books that if you haven't read them, you really should. It'll give you a baseline understanding of how really the separation between good companies and great companies. And it's fine to run a good company, but if you're going to be spending time whipping around the sun, you might as well have some fun, throw yourself a challenge, and build a great company. Yeah. So read Good to Great, read some of Jim Collins' stuff and Simon Sinek. It's all really good stuff.
Yeah, that's funny because we actually reference all 3 of those books in our courses. So yeah, you said Simon Sinek, Start With Why. You said Jim Collins, Good for Great, and what was the first one?
Rich Dad, Poor Dad
by Robert Kiyosaki. Yeah,
that's the first book I have anyone read in regards to money because it's interesting and it's revolutionary.
Yeah, I'm probably one of millions that say this line, but that was the first book that I read that really opened my eyes to what it was to be a business owner. That really is kind of the starting place for thinking differently from, a 9-to-5 job.
Yeah.
Well, our time's up for today, but that was an awesome talk. Thanks, Jason.
It was really great to be on, and thanks a ton for having me, Jason.
If you'd like to learn more about VRCORE's educational camps, gymnasium scale VR field trips, or if you're interested in opening a VRCORE franchise, check the links below. Thanks for checking out the Foundation VR podcast pilot show. If you'd like to see more content like this, leave a comment below to support the channel.